Hi everyone, just wanted to make a quick video about Module 5 this week. So as we're learning about intervention in groups, it's important also to talk about managing conflicts among groups. Some of you have already done so in your work or field placements, but I know this is kind of a common fear for newer social workers especially, or those who are starting or will be facilitating groups. So for while many of us, a common concern is conflict between group members, I think it's also important to note that there can be conflict between clinicians or co-facilitators or your coworkers as well. And while as social workers, I think we often think that we're very proficient with communication, or sometimes we know a little bit more than group members just when we're communicating. Um, it's definitely possible that we still have conflict with the people that we're working with or we're facilitating and leading a group with. Sometimes it's not always the case that we have a co-facilitator that is on the same wavelength as us, so we might have different understandings even of what the group should look like or what interventions we're doing or what might be helpful for the group as a whole and how to address any concerns that might be happening within the group. So why might there be conflict among members or co-facilitators? That can for group members, it can be referred to as the storming period that you can read in the book more about. Some of it can be sizing up others, whether it's by skill or whether it's by progress or this idea of seeing how we rank among others. And that can be same for us as facilitators as well. Am I someone that has a lot of experience in facilitating groups? Am I co-facilitator? It's their first day of work? Or is this someone in the group themselves, a group member that has been through this before or feels that they've made quite a bit of progress and another group member hasn't made quite as much progress? There might also be personality differences among facilitators and among group members, or style differences, especially among facilitators. So we should recognize what expectations or demands we're putting on our group, but also our co-facilitators as well. With our co-facilitators, it's so helpful to have a discussion with them about what our preferences are when we're facilitating a group and recognize each other's talents as well. With group members, they might be struggling, feeling like they belong less than others do, or that someone is more invested in the group, and that the goals are different from others among the group. So it's important to be able to recognize that and address it as well. It's also important to note that members might have conflictual feelings towards facilitators, but not just facilitators, authority figures, or others outside of the group, not just within the room that you're in. This could be because a group member feels that the facilitator might be favoring one group member, um, and it's important to kind of set up a level playing field for everyone. So think of an example if you address one member in the group for using a derogatory word or a swear word, and then let someone else do it without addressing it. It can certainly cause some tension and cause some conflict to arise from the group member to you, but also towards this other group member. So something to help avoid that would to be keeping strict boundaries and guidelines at a certain time, and that can be definitely used as anticipatory guidance as well, which is very trauma informed. So think of it when you're doing housekeeping, things like mentioning that there can't be any name calling or swearing in this group during sessions. Saying something like, if someone does call someone a name, I'm going to address it immediately, even if it feels like an inopportune time to do so, or even if it feels like someone is making progress in that moment, it's still important that I address that right away. This is important to address in the moment to maintain a group with respect. So giving that feedback at the beginning so that everyone is aware that that might occur should a name or swear word be used. It's also important to focus on the goal of the group and remember that conflict can reduce productivity, but it also can help address some of the concerns we have to move forward and really build an intervention that works best for this group. So with that being said, it can be very important to address conflict within the group, but also being mindful to not single anyone out if it's not appropriate to do so. So if a group member named Tom says he feels like Mike is always interrupting him when he's talking, maybe open up this idea to the group. Does anyone else feel like they've been interrupted? Does anyone else have ideas of how we can reduce this feeling of interruption? And that type of technique can allow for depersonalization towards Mike instead of coming up and then coming up with collaboratively a group standard for everyone. You can also ask the group as a whole if they have feedback for the group. So, something helpful if it's a tense group is to maybe not use names, but name what they see among group members as a whole. In some cases, you might need to focus the thought to avoid evasiveness, such as something like, um, Tom, you're speaking to the whole group right now, but you're mentioning something Mike said. Is that something you'd be willing to address with Mike? And pointing it out to avoid that feeling that we're not paying attention to to a feeling someone is having within the group. You might experience different types of conflicts too with mandated or involuntary clients compared to voluntary clients, which can be seen in the articles in this module, but definitely reach out to me with additional questions. When we're talking specifically about interventions with groups, as the facilitator, our role is definitely going to change throughout the lifespan of the group. We're often tasked with encouraging connections and cohesion within the group, reinforcing positive group behaviors, addressing group guidelines and boundaries, addressing members' roles, addressing if someone is maybe acting like the group clown or the group disbeliever or the group devil's advocate. And if these roles are showing to be detrimental to the group, part of intervention is addressing these concerns. And we should be mindful of how any subgroups that are developing, as well, how they're impacting the group and really what their role is among the group. We can use overarching phrases when we're seeing concerns in this group. Things like, I'm concerned about the function of the group at this time. I notice that there are some people who are whispering, some people who are on their phones, some people who are taking notes, and some who are involved in the discussion. And so everyone seems to be in a different place right now, and I'd like to do a check-in and see how everyone is feeling with the current state of our group. And again, not singling anyone out, but naming what you're seeing. When we're talking specifically about some interventions for certain populations, this is definitely a conversation we could talk about all day, and there's so many interesting ones on that exist. So I wanted to talk specifically about human trafficking, but there's just so many different interests of populations among this class that I kind of wanted to just touch briefly on them. And if you have a particular interest in one of these specific interventions I'll mention, definitely feel free to reach out to me, or it can just be a catalyst for doing some of your own research as well. And I encourage you to also ask others around you, whether it's classmates or coworkers or other people in your field placement, about different evidence-based interventions that have been helpful for them or maybe not helpful for them as well. But do your own research about evidence-based interventions. So for example, if we have a geriatric group, using yoga as an intervention might not be super helpful for mindfulness if that's something we're working on in the group. Maybe something like chair yoga could be more helpful, or just going down a completely different route with less movement altogether. For refugees, there's been a lot of good research done on story sharing as an intervention among group members and helping people connect to a common bond and share similar or different perspectives about their histories and their background and their countries of origin, and then sharing their stories as well to their current home. For those of you who are interested in human trafficking, there's been some research done about an intervention called STARS, which is Group Intervention Techniques for Complex Trauma Among Survivors, which is still being studied. And another thing that is really interesting for cancer survivors, there is been quite a bit of research on findings on increasing body image as an effective group technique tool among breast cancer survivors post-cancer treatment. And some of the suggestions for that include talking about sociocultural norms, how is it in Western society versus other places as it relates to body image, what media interpretation can be used for body image, and also using guided imagery and self-reflection on different photos of you from one point or group members from one point to now. Um, if anyone has a specific intervention for a population they found especially helpful or maybe even not helpful and you've experienced this firsthand, please feel free to share among the group. If you have any questions, reach out to me.